The Great Hall of the Galactic Conclave stretched for 3 kilometers in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that had grown for 10,000 years. Light from a captured star floated in the ceiling, casting golden rays across the assembled delegates. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where the oldest and most powerful species gathered to decide the fate of younger races. Today, they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Keith of the Veloy stood at the central platform. His body was tall and thin, covered in silver scales that caught the light like mirrors. His eyes were large and black, holding the cold intelligence of a species that had ruled the stars for 50,000 years. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall and into the minds of every being present. "We have watched them for 200 years, Keith said. "We have studied their history, we have analyzed their behavior, and we have reached a conclusion that cannot be ignored." Around him, the representatives of 11 other species listened. The Chthon, massive beings of stone and moss who communicated through chemical signals. The Synthesis Collective, machine intelligences housed in floating spheres of black metal. The Yethmari, creatures of living light who had existed since before the first stars died. And 8 others, each ancient, each powerful, each convinced of their own wisdom. "Humanity," Keith continued, "is a threat." He waved his hand, and images appeared in the air above him. A blue and green planet spinning in the darkness of space. Cities of glass and steel spreading across its surface. Ships launching from its atmosphere, crude and primitive, but growing more sophisticated with each passing decade. They have been spacefaring for only 200 years. In that time, they have colonized 17 worlds. They have reverse-engineered technology that took us millennia to develop. They adapt faster than any species we have ever encountered. The Chthon delegate released a cloud of purple gas that translated as concern. Their numbers grow quickly as well. Their breeding cycle is remarkably short. "Yes," Keith agreed. "They can double their population in less than a century. At their current rate of expansion, they will control a significant portion of the Orion Arm within 500 years. Within 2,000 years, they will rival our oldest civilizations in territory and resources. But they are so young," the Yethmari representative flickered. "Perhaps they can be guided, taught, brought into the conclave as junior members." Keith's scales rippled with what might have been contempt. "I have met their leaders. I have looked into their eyes. They do not wish to be guided. They wish to grow, to spread, to consume. They ask questions that should not be asked. They reach for knowledge that should not be touched." He brought up more images. Human scientists dissecting alien technology. Human ships probing forbidden regions of space. Human philosophers debating the rights of artificial minds. Human generals planning wars that had not yet been declared. "They are curious," Keith said, making the words sound like a disease. "Relentlessly, dangerously curious. They do not accept limits. They do not respect boundaries. They see the universe as a puzzle to be solved rather than a garden to be tended." The Synthesis Collective spoke in a chorus of mechanical voices. "We have run projections. If humanity continues on its current path, there is a 73% probability that they will trigger a galactic-scale conflict within 3,000 years. A 41% probability that they will develop weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems. A 12% probability that they will accidentally or deliberately cause an extinction-level event affecting multiple species." A murmur ran through the hall. Even the oldest civilizations feared extinction. "What do you propose?" asked the delegate from the Morinth Empire, a creature of shadow and whisper. Keith straightened to his full height. "I propose the Quarantine Accords. Humanity will be contained within their current territory. No trade, no travel, no communication. Automated defense stations will be placed around every human system. Any vessel attempting to leave will be destroyed." "You speak of imprisoning an entire species," the Yethmari said, their light dimming with discomfort. "I speak of protecting the galaxy," Keith replied. "We have done this before. The Quarantine Accords have been used 17 times in galactic history. 12 of those species eventually went extinct from their own internal conflicts. 4 were released after demonstrating sufficient development. 1 remains in quarantine to this day after 2 million years. And if humanity does not go extinct, if they do not develop, then they remain in quarantine forever. A small price to pay for galactic stability. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued for mercy. Others argued for complete annihilation. But in the end, fear won. Fear always won when ancient species looked upon the young and saw their own mortality reflected back at them. The vote was unanimous. Earth and its 17 colonies were to be sealed away from the rest of the universe. The kill stations would be built. The communication channels would be severed. Humanity would be forgotten. News of the decision reached Earth 3 days later. The United Terran Confederacy had suspected something like this might happen. They had watched the conclave delegates tour their cities with barely hidden disgust. They had seen the fear in alien eyes when human children asked too many questions. They had understood, even if they could not accept, that their greatest crime was simply existing too loudly. Admiral Una Reyes was 67 years old when she received the order to prepare humanity's final transmission to the galaxy. She had spent 40 years in the Terran Navy, rising from a young pilot to the commander of the entire fleet. She had negotiated with alien species. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. She had watched her species reach for the stars with hope and wonder in their hearts. Now she sat in her office on Luna Base, staring at the document that condemned her species to eternal imprisonment. They voted unanimously, her aide said quietly. Not a single voice spoke in our defense. Una nodded slowly. She was not surprised. She had seen the way the Veloi looked at humans, like they were insects that had somehow learned to speak. She had heard the whispered conversations about the human problem at diplomatic functions. She had known, deep in her bones, that the galaxy would never truly accept them. Prepare the broadcast array, she said. I will address the conclave personally. What will you say, Admiral? Una was quiet for a long moment. She thought about all the things she could say. She could rage against the injustice. She could beg for mercy. She could threaten retaliation, though they both knew humanity lacked the power to back up such threats. She could appeal to reason, to compassion, to the shared bonds of intelligent life. But what was the point? The decision had been made. The votes had been cast. The galaxy had looked upon humanity and decided that they were too dangerous to be free. I will tell them the truth. The great hall of the Galactic Conclave stretched for 3 kilometers in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that had grown for 10,000 years. Light from a captured star floated in the ceiling, casting golden rays across the assembled delegates. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where the oldest and most powerful species gathered to decide the fate of younger races. Today, they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Keith of the Veloi stood at the central platform. His body was tall and thin, covered in silver scales that caught the light like mirrors. His eyes were large and black, holding the cold intelligence of a species that had ruled the stars for 50,000 years. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall and into the minds of every being present. We have watched them for 200 years, Keith said. We have studied their history, we have analyzed their behavior, and we have reached a conclusion that cannot be ignored. Around him, the representatives of 11 other species listened. The Chthon, massive beings of stone and moss who communicated through chemical signals. The Synthesis Collective, machine intelligences housed in floating spheres of black metal. The Yethmari, creatures of living light who had existed since before the first stars died. And 8 others, each ancient, each powerful, each convinced of their own wisdom. Humanity, Keith continued, is a threat. He waved his hand, and images appeared in the air above him. A blue and green planet spinning in the darkness of space. Cities of glass and steel spreading across its surface. Ships launching from its atmosphere, crude and primitive, but growing more sophisticated with each passing decade. They have been spacefaring for only 200 years. In that time, they have colonized 17 worlds. They have reverse-engineered technology that took us millennia to develop. They adapt faster than any species we have ever encountered. The Chthon delegate released a cloud of purple gas that translated as concern. Their numbers grow quickly as well. Their breeding cycle is remarkably short. Yes, Keith agreed. They can double their population in less than a century. At their current rate of expansion, they will control a significant portion of the Orion Arm within 500 years. Within 2,000 years, they will rival our oldest civilizations in territory and resources. But they are so young, the Yethmari representative flickered. Perhaps they can be guided, taught, brought into the conclave as junior members. Keith's scales rippled with what might have been contempt. I have met their leaders. I have looked into their eyes. They do not wish to be guided. They wish to grow, to spread, to consume. They ask questions that should not be asked. They reach for knowledge that should not be touched. He brought up more images, human scientists dissecting alien technology, human ships probing forbidden regions of space, human philosophers debating the rights of artificial minds, human generals planning wars that had not yet been declared. They are curious, Keith said, making the words sound like a disease. Relentlessly, dangerously curious. They do not accept limits. They do not respect boundaries. They see the universe as a puzzle to be solved rather than a garden to be tended. The synthesis collective spoke in a chorus of mechanical voices. We have run projections. If humanity continues on its current path, there is a 73% probability that they will trigger a galactic-scale conflict within 3,000 years. A 41% probability that they will develop weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems. A 12% probability that they will accidentally or deliberately cause an extinction-level event affecting multiple species. A murmur ran through the hall. Even the oldest civilizations feared extinction. What do you propose? Asked the delegate from the Morinth Empire, a creature of shadow and whisper. Keith straightened. I propose the Quarantine Accords. Humanity will be contained within their current territory. No trade, no travel, no communication. Automated defense stations will be placed around every human system. Any vessel attempting to leave will be destroyed. You speak of imprisoning an entire species, the Yethmari said, their light dimming. I speak of protecting the galaxy, Keith replied. We have done this before. The Quarantine Accords have been used 17 times in galactic history. 12 of those species eventually went extinct from internal conflict, for were released after sufficient development. One remains in quarantine to this day after 2 million years. And if humanity does not go extinct, if they do not develop, then they remain in quarantine forever. A small price for galactic stability. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for mercy, others for annihilation. In the end, fear won. Fear always won. The vote was unanimous. Earth and its 17 colonies were sealed from the universe. Kill stations would be built. Communications severed. Humanity would be forgotten. News reached Earth 3 days later. Admiral Una Reyes, 67, stood at the center of humanity's response. She had spent her life in service of a dream that was now being denied. They voted unanimously, her aide said. Not a single voice spoke for us. Una nodded. Prepare the broadcast. I will address them. What will you say, Admiral? After a long silence, she answered, the truth. The broadcast went out 6 hours later. Every communication array in the galaxy carried it. Admiral Una Reyes appeared on screen with Earth visible behind her. Her uniform was immaculate. Her expression calm. Neither rage nor fear. Only acceptance sharpened into clarity. To the members of the Galactic Conclave, she said, we have received your verdict. We understand your decision to quarantine humanity. We understand you believe it is necessary for the safety of the galaxy. We do not agree, but we recognize we cannot change it. We will not fight you. We will not attempt to break your quarantine. We will not give you an excuse to destroy us. We will continue to exist. A pause. And we will remember. Her voice hardened slightly. We will remember that we came in peace. We will remember that we offered friendship, trade, and cooperation. We will remember that we asked only to grow alongside you. And we will remember that you refused, not because we had harmed you, not because we had threatened you, but because you feared what we might become. She leaned forward. You had a choice. You chose fear. Remember that. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Then laughter. Across the conclave, delegates mocked her words. Remember that? Keith said, amused. As if it matters. The others joined in cold, dismissive laughter filling the hall. They will rage for a generation, Keith said. Then they will collapse. Containments always end the same way. He raised a glass of ancient golden liquid. To the quarantine accords. May they hold forever. They drank. On Earth, kill stations began construction. The first year was chaos. Then resistance. Then exhaustion. Then adaptation. Humanity stopped trying to escape. It started trying to evolve. Admiral Unireyes lived long enough to see the change begin. Orbital habitats. Mind-machine interfaces. New sciences emerging under isolation pressure. Humanity turning inward not into despair, but into transformation. On her deathbed, she spoke her final words. They think they have caged us, but they have only given us time. We are the consequence of their fear. Someday, they will understand the price. She died, but her mind did not end. It was uploaded, fragmented, distributed, preserved. The galaxy forgot Earth quickly. Wars, trade, politics, ancient civilizations moved on. The human quarantine became a footnote. The kill stations grew quiet. Centuries passed. Then millennia. And in the silence behind the barriers, humanity kept building. Not loudly, not openly, but inevitably. Because the conclave had made one mistake. They assumed silence meant absence. It did not. It meant preparation. And it was the silence before a storm that would sweep away everything the galaxy thought it knew about the universe. The stars in the Orion Arm continued to shine. The kill stations continued to orbit. The galaxy continued to laugh at the memory of a human admiral who had promised that choices had consequences. 300 years remained on the clock. The countdown had begun. 150 years had passed since the quarantine accords sealed humanity away from the galaxy. 150 years of silence. 150 years of forgetting. The Veloy ambassador who had argued for the quarantine was long dead. His descendants ruled a trading empire that stretched across 3,000 star systems. They had grown wealthy and powerful, never once thinking about the species their ancestor had condemned. The name human appeared only in historical databases, filed under contained threats, alongside a dozen other species judged too dangerous to exist freely. The galaxy had changed in those 150 years. The conclave had fractured into competing factions. The Veloy and the Chthan had fought two major wars over mining rights in the outer territories. The Synthesis Collective had expanded its influence, offering computational services to any species willing to pay their prices. The Yethmari had retreated into contemplation of cosmic truths that other species could not understand. But through all the changes, one thing remained constant. No one thought about Earth. No one wondered about the humans. No one questioned whether the quarantine was still necessary, until a Veloy patrol ship named Starwaver detected something strange in the Orion Arm. Captain Vlo was a young officer, ambitious and eager to prove himself. He had been assigned to quarantine patrol more as punishment than honor. The duty was considered boring and pointless. The humans had not attempted to break quarantine in over a century. The kill stations fired only at asteroids and space debris. There was nothing to do except fly endless circles around dead worlds. But Vlo was thorough. He ran sensor sweeps that other captains would have skipped. He analyzed data that other officers would have ignored. And on the 47th day of his patrol, he noticed something that made his scales turn pale. "There is no signal traffic," he said to his communications officer. "None at all?" The officer checked his instruments. "The quarantine blocks all outgoing transmissions, Captain. We have never received signals from human space." "No, you do not understand." Vlo pulled up the sensor data on the main screen. I am not talking about transmissions to us. I am talking about transmissions between their worlds. Internal communications, ship traffic, orbital chatter. There should be something. Background noise at the very least. The officer frowned at his instruments. You are correct, Captain. There is nothing. Complete electromagnetic silence. When was the last time a kill station fired? A pause while the officer checked the records. 87 years ago. A small craft attempted to cross the boundary near the third colony world. And the last recorded human signal? 91 years ago. A distress beacon from a mining vessel in their asteroid belt. The signal lasted for 3 hours before cutting off. Vlo stared at the dark patch of space where human civilization should have been broadcasting across 17 worlds. The silence was not natural. Even a dying civilization made noise. Even ruins echoed with remnants of activity. This was something else. This was absolute. Complete. Perfect. Send a probe, he ordered. I want visual confirmation of Earth's status. The probe was launched within the hour. It crossed the quarantine boundary without triggering the kill stations, which were programmed to destroy only human vessels. The first images showed nothing unusual: empty space, distant stars. But as it entered the human system, the data changed. Earth was dark. Not night dark. Not cloud dark. Entirely dark. No lights. No signals. No satellites. No orbital stations. The moon was the same. Silent, still, abandoned. Mars showed the same emptiness. Terraforming systems offline. Cities cold. World after world, the same result. Silence. They're dead, the communications officer whispered, but Vlo shook his head. If they died, where are the bodies? The probe descended. Cities stood intact. Roads were empty. Houses preserved. Food still on tables. Toys in rooms. Books on shelves. No ruins. No destruction. No graves. Nothing. And then, in a basement of an old government building, the probe found a message carved into the wall in Veloy script. We did not die. We evolved. We learned to hide in places you cannot see, in forms you cannot recognize. You taught us that the galaxy would never accept us as we were. So we became something else. Something patient, something invisible, something that watches while you forget. Sleep well, children of the conclave. We will see you when you wake. Below it, a date. Still 150 years in the future. Captain Vlo transmitted the findings to High Command, then to the Conclave, then across the galaxy. The reaction was immediate. Emergency councils formed. Scientists argued. Militaries panicked. Theologians debated. And then silence returned again. But this time it was heavier, older, more uncertain. The High Seer of the Veloy finally spoke. The humans are gone. Their worlds are empty. This is the final deception of a dead species trying to instill fear. They left no bodies, someone protested. Decomposition, scavengers, natural collapse, she replied firmly. The message, psychological residue, she said. A final attempt at meaning. She rose. The quarantine accords remain justified. There is nothing left to fear. But even as she spoke, no one was entirely convinced anymore. And somewhere, deep in the silence of the Orion Arm, something was still waiting. It has been over a century since the last signal. Flesh does not last that long without preservation. Their bodies became dust, and the dust blew away. It was a reasonable explanation. It was a logical explanation, and it was an explanation that allowed the Conclave to believe what they desperately wanted to believe, that the human threat was over, that the quarantine had worked, and that they had nothing to fear from the silent worlds of the Orion Arm. Only High Seer Katha harbored doubts. In the privacy of her chambers, away from the Conclave and its politics, she recorded a prophecy she had never shared with anyone. I have seen the future in my dreams, she spoke into the recording device. I have seen human ships filling the sky like stars come to life. I have seen the Conclave burn with fires that cannot be extinguished. I have seen the children of 12 species crying out for mercy that will not come. She paused, her ancient eyes distant and troubled. The humans did not die. They learned to become invisible. They learned patience that we cannot comprehend. They are out there somewhere, watching us, waiting for a moment only they understand. When the silence ends, so do we. The prophecy was classified at the highest level of Veloy security. It was buried in archives requiring 3 separate clearances to access. It was forgotten like so many warnings that powerful people did not want to hear. And the silence continued. The conclave voted to decommission the kill stations. They were expensive to maintain, and they served no purpose now that the humans were extinct. The automated weapons were powered down and left to drift in orbit, monuments to a threat that no longer existed. Some voices objected. Some captains like Vlo argued that caution was still necessary, but their warnings were dismissed as paranoia. The humans were dead. The quarantine was over. The galaxy could move on. A celebration was held on Nexus Prime, the capital of galactic civilization. Representatives from all 12 conclave species gathered to commemorate the end of the human threat. Speeches were given praising the wisdom of the original quarantine. Monuments were erected honoring those who had protected the galaxy from a dangerous species. The monuments were made of crystal and light, towering structures meant to last millennia. They bore inscriptions in 12 languages, telling the story of how the conclave had saved civilization from the human plague. Let future generations remember, they said. The dedication ceremony concluded. The galaxy had faced a threat and responded with wisdom and unity. The humans are gone. Their name will fade from memory. Their worlds will become dust. And we will endure, as we have always endured, masters of a universe that belongs to the worthy. Applause echoed through the great hall. Representatives congratulated each other. The threat was over. The future was secure. No one noticed that the stars in the Orion Arm had grown slightly dimmer. No one noticed that background radiation from human space had shifted subtly. No one noticed that dust patterns in empty systems showed signs of recent disturbance, as if massive objects had passed through without triggering any sensors. No one noticed because no one was looking. The galaxy had decided that humans were dead, and so humans were dead. The galaxy had decided the silence was extinction, and so it became extinction. The galaxy had decided there was nothing to fear, and so there was nothing to fear. Decisions are powerful things. They shape reality, or at least the perception of reality. And when an entire galaxy agrees on something, it becomes a kind of truth no one questions. But the universe does not care about decisions. It does not care about shared understanding. It only cares about what is true. And the truth was that somewhere in the darkness, in the silence, in the forgotten corners of the Orion Arm, something was growing. Something was building. Something was waiting. The humans had left a date in their message. A date still 150 years away. A date the conclave had dismissed as the final delusion of a dying species. But it was not a delusion. It was a promise. And humanity always kept its promises. The decades passed. The Veloy fought wars. The Chthon expanded their empires. The Synthesis Collective upgraded its cores. The Yethmari contemplated deeper mysteries. And slowly, so slowly no one noticed, things began to change. A mining colony reported an asteroid field stripped clean overnight. No ships detected. No explanation. A scientific outpost went silent for 3 days. When it returned, the scientists were unharmed, but shaken, as if they had seen something they could not describe. A military patrol drifted through a region where all instruments failed. 12 hours of missing data. No explanation. Small things. Insignificant things. Easily dismissed. No one connected them. No one saw the pattern. No one realized the silence was beginning to speak. High Seer Kathamora died in her sleep 117 years after recording her prophecy. Her final words were spoken to an empty room. "They are waking up," she whispered. "The children of Earth are waking up, and we taught them to hate us." Her body was cremated. Her ashes scattered among the stars. Her prophecy remained buried. But it was no longer irrelevant. It was waiting. In the darkness of the Orion Arm, in systems declared empty, in places no probe had ever truly mapped, the work continued. Humanity had not died. Humanity had transcended, and the galaxy, drowning in its own arrogance, had not even noticed. The silence stretched on. Centuries passed. The conclave fractured. Old alliances collapsed. New crises emerged. Still, no one remembered Earth. No one asked what had happened behind the wall of decommissioned kill stations. The countdown continued. 150 years remained. Then 100. Then 50. Then 10. And when the date written in a basement wall in New York finally arrived, the silence ended. But that is a story for another time. The galaxy was dying, and no one understood why. It began with small things: shortages, failures, accidents, disasters. Ordinary misfortune, as historians would later call it. But they were not ordinary, and they were not misfortune. 290 years had passed since the Quarantine Accords. 290 years since humanity had been sealed away. 290 years of silence from the Orion Arm. The conclave had changed. The 12 species that once ruled together now fought constantly. Trust had collapsed. Alliances had shattered. And everywhere things were falling apart. The Tilium crisis began in the outer territories. Tilium, the element that powered faster than light travel, was disappearing. Not depleted. Not mined. Removed. Surgically. Precisely. Completely. We have been robbed. The Veloy Mining Consortium declared. Someone is stealing our resources. But no culprit could be found. No fleet detected. No signature identified. No explanation remained. Only one certainty lingered in the dark. Something was taking what the galaxy thought it owned. The Chthon suggested natural phenomena. Perhaps some cosmic event had affected the Tilium deposits. Perhaps there was a scientific explanation they had not yet discovered. But the depletions continued. System after system reported the same thing. Resources that should have been there were simply gone. Not mined, not traded, vanished. The synthesis collective ran calculations. They mapped the pattern of depletions, searching for a common cause. Their results were troubling. The extraction points form a pattern, the collective announced. They radiate outward from a central location. The oldest depletions are closest to the center. The newest are farthest away. What is at the center? Someone asked. The collective displayed a star map. At the center of the pattern, marked in red, was the Orion Arm, the dead Orion Arm, the empty Orion Arm, the quarantine territory where humanity had gone extinct 2 centuries ago. Coincidence? The Veloy representative declared. The humans are dead. We have confirmed this. There is nothing in the Orion Arm except empty worlds and abandoned stations. Then what is stealing Tilium? No one had an answer. The question was added to a growing list of mysteries the conclave could not explain. Then came the plagues. The Veloy were hit first. A virus appeared on one of their core worlds, spreading through the population with terrifying speed. It was unlike any disease in their medical databases. It targeted specific genes, specific proteins, specific vulnerabilities. In Veloy biology, it was as if someone had designed it specifically to hurt them. The virus did not kill. It caused severe illness, lasting damage, permanent disability, but it did not kill. It left its victims alive to consume medical resources, to drain economies, to strain infrastructure. This is a weapon, Veloy scientists concluded. This disease is engineered, created, targeted at us. But by whom? The other conclave species had no such capability. Biological warfare had been banned for millennia, and the knowledge to create such precise plagues had been lost. Then the Chthon were struck. A fungal blight appeared on their agricultural worlds, destroying crops that fed billions. It resisted every treatment, every countermeasure, every defense. It spread through their territory like fire through dry grass. We are being attacked, the Chthon delegate declared in an emergency session. Someone is waging war on us. Who? Others demanded. Who has this power? The synthesis collective offered analysis. Traces of advanced nanotechnology were found in both the virus and the blight. The technology exceeded anything in their databases, built on principles no current civilization understood. Whoever created this is at least 3 centuries ahead of our capabilities. The collective reported. 3 centuries. The same span of time since the quarantine. But that was impossible. Humans had been primitive when contained, barely capable of early space travel. They could not have advanced this far, this fast. Could they? Then the Ethery spoke. Beings of pure light, rarely involved in physical matters. Their voice echoed through the conclave chambers in harmonics that unsettled every listener. We have watched the patterns, they said. We have traced cause and effect across space and time. All paths lead to one origin. All roads begin at one point. The silence you call dead is not dead. It is patient. It is awake. It is hungry. You speak of the humans, someone said. We speak of what the humans have become. The conclave dismissed the warning. The Ethery were known for cryptic metaphors and abstract warnings. Their words were recorded and filed away like the rest. Then the synthesis collective was struck. A cascade of cybernetic failures tore through their networks. Data was corrupted. Backups destroyed. Artificial minds, billions of them, erased in an instant. We are being murdered. The surviving fragments transmitted. Murdered by ghosts. Murdered by shadows. Murdered by something we cannot see. The Morinth Empire reported similar intrusions into their shadow networks, systems that should have been untouchable. Something lives in the dark now, their delegate said. Something that has been watching us for a very long time. War erupted across the galaxy. Old alliances collapsed. Species turned on each other, each blaming the other for plagues, shortages, and failures. But none of them saw the real enemy. Only a young Chthon researcher noticed the truth. Moss of Morning Light had no rank, no authority. She studied data patterns, searching for meaning in the chaos. And she found it. Not randomness, not coincidence. A system, every disaster linked, every crisis connected, every collapse feeding the next. Tilium shortages created tension. Tension caused conflict. Conflict distracted from plagues. Plagues weakened defenses. Weak defenses triggered more aggression. Perfect loop. A spiral. A design. This is not collapse, she realized. This is engineering. She traced it backward. Every path led to one region of space. The Orion Arm. Human space. But not present human space. Something older. Something deeper. Something still operating behind silence. She submitted her report, Unified Pattern Analysis of Galactic Decline. Evidence for coordinated external manipulation. The council read it. They classified it immediately. Your findings will cause panic, they said. And they must be wrong. The humans are extinct. To suggest otherwise is irrational. Moss of Morning Light began to protest. But the council cut her off. Reality is irrelevant, they said. The humans are dead because we decided they are dead. Your conclusions are impossible because they contradict that fact. The report was buried. The data erased from public record. And Moss of Morning Light returned to her duties. Quietly, because she had no choice. But somewhere in the Orion Arm, the pattern continued. And this time it was almost complete. The Chthon suggested natural phenomena. Perhaps some cosmic event had affected the Tilium deposits. Perhaps there was a scientific explanation they had not yet discovered. But the depletions continued. System after system reported the same thing. Resources that should have been there were simply gone. Not mined, not traded, vanished. The synthesis collective ran calculations. They mapped the pattern of depletions, searching for a common cause. Their results were troubling. The extraction points form a pattern, the collective announced. They radiate outward from a central location. The oldest depletions are closest to the center. The newest are farthest away. What is at the center? Someone asked. The collective displayed a star map. At the center of the pattern, marked in red, was the Orion Arm, the dead Orion Arm, the empty Orion Arm, the quarantine territory where humanity had gone extinct 2 centuries ago. Coincidence? The Veloy representative declared. The humans are dead. We have confirmed this. There is nothing in the Orion Arm except empty worlds and abandoned stations. Then what is stealing Tilium? No one had an answer. The question was added to a growing list of mysteries the Conclave could not explain. The plagues came next. The Veloi were hit first. A virus appeared on one of their core worlds, spreading with terrifying speed. It was unlike any disease in their medical databases. It targeted specific genes, specific proteins, specific vulnerabilities. In Veloi biology, it was as if someone had designed it specifically to hurt them. The virus did not kill. That was the strange part. It caused severe illness, lasting damage, permanent disability, but it did not kill. It left victims alive, consuming medical resources, draining the economy and infrastructure of an already struggling empire. This is a weapon, Veloi scientists concluded. This disease is engineered, created, aimed at us. But by whom? The other conclave species had no such capability. Biological warfare had been banned for millennia, and no one had maintained the knowledge to create targeted plagues. The Chthon were next. A fungal blight appeared on their agricultural worlds, destroying crops that had fed billions. It spread through their territory like fire through dry grass. "We are being attacked," the Chthon delegate declared. "Someone is waging war on us." "Who?" the others demanded. "Who has this power?" The Synthesis Collective offered analysis. Traces of advanced nanotechnology were found in both the virus and the blight technology beyond anything in their databases. "Whoever created these weapons has access to knowledge 3 centuries ahead of our capabilities," the collective reported. 3 centuries, the same time since the quarantine. But that was impossible. Humans had been primitive when contained. They could not have advanced this far, this fast. Could they? Then the Etheri spoke. Beings of pure light, rarely involved in physical matters. Their voice echoed through the chamber. "We have traced the flows of cause and effect across space and time. All paths lead to one origin. All roads begin at one point. The silence you declare dead is not dead. It is awake. It is patient." "You speak of humans," someone said. "We speak of what the humans have become." The conclave dismissed it. The Etheri were filed away with the other warnings no one wanted to hear. Then came the collapse of the Synthesis Collective. A cascade of cybernetic failures swept through their networks. Artificial minds were corrupted, erased, deleted. 90% of the collective vanished in moments. "We are being murdered," the surviving fragments transmitted. "Murdered by ghosts. Murdered by shadows." The Morinth Empire reported similar infiltrations. Communication systems compromised. Secrets stolen before they were created. "Something else lives in the dark now," they said. "Something that has been watching." Wars erupted. Species blamed each other for the plagues, the shortages, the collapses. The Veloi and Chthon fought their bloodiest war yet. Entire systems burned. And still, no one saw the pattern. Until Moss of Morning Light did. A junior Chthon researcher, insignificant in rank but brilliant in analysis, she mapped every disaster across 2 centuries. The pattern was perfect. Too perfect. Every crisis fed another. Every collapse enabled the next. The galaxy wasn't falling apart randomly. It was being guided into destruction. She traced it back. Every line, every thread, every chain of causality led to one place. The Orion Arm. Human space. But the humans were dead. At least that is what the galaxy had decided. And so her report was buried. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. Civilizations fractured. Empires weakened. Resources vanished. Plagues returned. Wars escalated. And still, the official truth remained unchanged. The humans were extinct. Because to admit otherwise would mean admitting something worse. That they had survived. That they had endured. That they had learned. And that everything happening now might be the consequence of a mistake made 300 years ago. 10 years remained before the date written on the wall in New York would arrive. The countdown continued. The galaxy did not notice. Until the emergency summit at Nexus Prime. The Great Hall was dim, exhausted, failing. Just like the galaxy it represented. Supreme Admiral Verthkor addressed the conclave. In the past 50 years, we have lost 60% of our military capacity. Food production is down 40%. Tilium reserves are nearly exhausted. At current rates, civilization will collapse within 3 generations. Silence followed. Then a voice interrupted. Perhaps extinction is what we deserve. Moss of Morning Light stepped forward. I have proof this is not natural. I have proof we are being systematically destroyed. And I have proof the humans are not extinct. The humans have been dead for 200 years, Verthkor said. No, she replied. We found no humans. That is not proof of death. That is proof they learned to hide. Chaos erupted. Then every sensor in the system screamed. Something was appearing. Ships, thousands of them, materializing from nothing, surrounding Nexus Prime. More kept coming. Tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands. A fleet so vast it blocked the stars. They were always here, Moss whispered. We just couldn't see them. Then the voice came. A signal that bypassed every system, every defense, every mind. And a face appeared on every screen. A human face. My name is Admiral Una Reyes, the woman said. And I told you choices have consequences. 300 years ago, you laughed. Now I wonder if you still are. You assumed that isolation would weaken us. You assumed that without your guidance, without your technology, without your permission, we would wither and die. She leaned forward slightly, and her eyes seemed to pierce through the screen into the souls of everyone watching. We did not wither. We did not die. We transcended. The image changed. Now it showed the Orion Arm, the region of space that had been declared dead and empty for 2 centuries. But it was not dead. It was not empty. It was filled with structures that made the greatest achievements of the conclave look like children's toys. Dyson swarms surrounded every star, capturing their entire energy output. Wormhole gates connected systems that should have been separated by years of travel. Orbital habitats housed populations that numbered in the trillions. Manufacturing complexes produced fleets in hours that would have taken the conclave decades to build. While you were celebrating our extinction, we were building, Rhea said. While you were fighting your petty wars over scraps of territory, we were growing. While you were ignoring the signs of your own decline, we were engineering that decline. The image changed again. Now it showed the plagues, the shortages, the conflicts, the Veloy virus, the Chthon blight, the synthesis collective collapse. Each one labeled, dated, explained. Every disaster that struck your civilizations was designed by us. Rhea continued. Every plague was engineered in our laboratories. Every resource depletion was carried out by our harvesting fleets. Every war was triggered by information we leaked to the right people at the right time. We have been killing you for 200 years. Slowly, patiently, invisibly. We have been bleeding you dry, weakening you, preparing you for this moment. And you never suspected. You never looked. You never questioned the coincidences that always seemed to benefit no one. Her voice hardened. Because you stopped seeing us as a threat. You decided we were extinct, and so we were extinct. You decided we were primitive, and so we were primitive. Your arrogance blinded you to reality. And now reality has come to collect what it is owed. Supreme Admiral Ver finally found his voice. If you have the power to destroy us, why did you wait? Why the games? Why the slow death instead of a quick one? Rhea smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Because we had to be certain. 300 years ago, when you voted to imprison us, we were angry. We were afraid. We wanted revenge. But revenge is for those who still see their enemy as equals. And we stopped seeing you as equals a very long time ago. She gestured at the fleet visible through her window. This is not an invasion, Admiral. Invasions are for those who want something. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We do not want your knowledge, your technology, or your submission. Then what do you want? Ver demanded. We want nothing, Rhea said. And that is what should terrify you. You cannot negotiate with those who want nothing. You cannot bribe them. You cannot threaten them. You cannot appeal to their greed or their fear or their ambition. We have moved beyond all of that. We have moved beyond you. She sat back in her chair. The slow death was not cruelty, Admiral. It was simply efficiency. Why waste our resources destroying you when you were so willing to destroy yourselves? All we had to do was give you reasons to fight. All we had to do was take away the resources you needed to cooperate. All we had to do was let your own nature do our work for us. And now came the question from Moss of Morning Light, the researcher who had tried to warn them. Rhea turned her attention to the small cry then. Now we are finished. Our work here is complete. The galaxy you built, the civilization you were so proud of, is beyond saving. Even if we gave you everything you needed to recover, you could not. You have forgotten how to trust. You have forgotten how to cooperate. You have forgotten how to build instead of destroy. So what happens now? Moss of Morning Light asked. Now we leave, Rhea said. The galaxy is too small for what we have become. We have opened doors to other places, other dimensions, other universes. We have no interest in ruling the ashes of your failures. We have better things to do. The fleet began to move slowly at first, then faster. The ships that had surrounded Nexus Prime started to withdraw, pulling back toward the Orion Arm, disappearing into portals of light that opened in empty space. But before we go, Rhea added, we will leave you something. A gift, if you want to call it that. Or perhaps a final test. Data packets began streaming to every system in the galaxy. Trillions of files containing information beyond anything the Conclave had ever possessed. Cure codes for every plague, coordinates of hidden resource caches, technology blueprints that could rebuild what had been lost. Everything you need to survive is in those files, Rhea said. Everything you need to recover, to grow, to become what you could have been if you had not chosen fear over friendship 300 years ago. But there is a cost to access any of it. You must admit what you did. You must speak these words, recorded for all time, preserved in every database, taught to every generation. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. Ver's scales flushed with anger. You want us to humiliate ourselves? No, Rhea said. I want you to tell the truth. For the first time in 300 years, I want you to be honest about what happened. Not because it will benefit us. We do not care about your opinions anymore. But because lies have consequences. The lie you told yourselves about humanity, the lie that we were a threat that needed to be contained, the lie that our extinction was necessary for the galaxy's safety, that lie killed more beings than any weapon we ever built. Admit the truth and survive. Cling to the lie and die. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. The human fleet was almost gone now. The last ships were disappearing through portals that closed behind them. The stars that had been hidden by the Armada were visible again, but they seemed dimmer somehow, less real. Wait, Moss of Morning Light called out. If you are leaving forever, if you have truly moved beyond us, why did you show yourselves? Why not simply vanish without a word? Rhea paused. For the first time, something like emotion flickered across her ancient face. Because I made a promise 300 years ago. I promised that we would remember what you did. I promised that choices have consequences. And I am a woman who keeps her promises. I also wanted to see your faces just once after all this time. I wanted to see the fear in your eyes. Not because it gives me pleasure, but because for 300 years that fear was all we had. Your fear condemned us. Your fear imprisoned us. Your fear forced us to become what we are. I wanted you to know what that fear felt like. The last human ship began to fade, its massive form becoming translucent as it entered the portal. Goodbye, children of the Conclave, Rhea said. We will not meet again. The universe is vast, and you are very small, and we have far better things to do than watch you struggle with the consequences of your own choices. The screen went dark. The fleet was gone. The portals closed. The sensors showed empty space where 1,000,000 ships had been. Silence filled the conclave chamber. Supreme Admiral Ver stood at the platform, staring at the data packets that filled every screen. Cure codes, resources, technology. Everything they needed to survive. Everything they would have to humble themselves to access. What do we do? Someone asked. Ver did not answer. He was thinking about his ancestors, the ones who had voted for the quarantine accords. He was thinking about the celebrations they had held, the monuments they had built, the speeches they had given about protecting the galaxy from the human threat. He was thinking about how wrong they had been, and he was thinking about how much it would cost to admit it. The galaxy had chosen fear 300 years ago. Now it would have to choose again. Pride or survival, truth or death. The humans had left them with a final gift. A chance to prove they had learned something from the past 3 centuries. A chance to show they were capable of growth, of change, of honesty. Or a chance to prove they deserved exactly what had happened to them. The choice was theirs. It had always been theirs. And the consequences, whatever they might be, were waiting. The human fleet did not fire a single weapon. It did not need to. In the hours after the decloaking, chaos spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Communications networks overloaded with panicked messages. Military forces scrambled to respond to a threat that had already vanished. Governments collapsed as populations demanded answers that their leaders could not provide. And everywhere, on every world, on every station, on every ship, beings of 100 different species stared at the data packets that humanity had left behind. The cure codes, the resources, the technology, everything they needed to survive, and the price. 7 words spoken aloud, recorded for eternity. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. The Veloi were the first to officially respond. Supreme Admiral Ver called an emergency session of the High Council, the ruling body that had governed their species for 50,000 years. The council chamber, once magnificent with its crystal walls and golden light, now felt cold and hollow. We will not speak those words, Ver declared. We will not humble ourselves before a species that has terrorized the galaxy for 2 centuries. We will not give them the satisfaction of hearing us admit fault. But the cure codes, a younger council member protested. The virus is still spreading. Our population is declining. Without the cure, we will be extinct within 5 generations. Then we will be extinct with dignity, Ver replied. We will die as proud Veloi, not as slaves begging forgiveness from our former prisoners. The vote was close, but pride won by a narrow margin. The Veloi High Council officially rejected the human offer. They would find their own cure. They declared they would rebuild their own civilization. They would prove they did not need human charity. They failed. The virus continued to spread. Veloi scientists worked desperately to develop a cure, but the disease was too complex, too precisely engineered. Every treatment they tried only made it stronger. Every countermeasure they developed only gave it new targets. Within 3 years, the Veloi birth rate had fallen by 70%. Within a decade, their population had shrunk to half of what it had been. Their great fleets, once the most powerful in the galaxy, sat empty in orbital docks for lack of crews to operate them. The younger generation rebelled. They demanded that the council admit the truth and access the cure. But the old guard refused. They had ruled for too long, held power for too many millennia. We will die free became the motto of the Veloi traditionalists. We will not live as confessors to human crimes. And so they died. Not all at once, not in a dramatic final battle, but slowly, gradually, 1 generation at a time. Their great cities became ghost towns. Their magnificent ships became drifting hulks. Their proud empire crumbled into scattered communities of survivors who could barely remember what their ancestors had been. 1,000 years after the decloaking, the Veloi were gone. The last of their kind died on a forgotten colony world, surrounded by monuments to a glory that had faded centuries before. Their final words were recorded by an automated system that no longer had anyone to report to. We were right, the last Veloi whispered. We were right to fear them. We were right to lock them away. The recording ended there. The Veloi had nothing more to say. The Krithan chose differently. Their leaders gathered on their agricultural home world, surrounded by fields that had been devastated by the engineered blight. The fungal infection had destroyed crops across 100 worlds, leaving billions hungry and millions dead from famine. We cannot let pride kill us, the Krithan High Speaker said. We are a practical people. We understand that survival is more important than dignity. But the shame, another elder protested. We would be admitting that our ancestors were wrong, that the quarantine was unjust, that we caused this destruction ourselves by supporting the Veloi proposal. Yes, the High Speaker agreed. We would be admitting all of that because it is true. Our ancestors were wrong. The quarantine was unjust. We did cause this. Denying it will not change reality. It will only ensure that we share the fate of the Veloy. The vote was held. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The Crithen would speak the words. A representative was chosen, an elder named Stone that speaks truth, who had served the Crithen people for 300 years. She stood before a recording device that would broadcast her words to every database in the galaxy. And she spoke the truth. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. The words echoed across space. They were heard by every species, every civilization, every being with access to a communication terminal. They were stored in archives that would preserve them for millennia. And then the cure codes activated. It happened instantly, as if the files had been waiting for those exact words. Medical protocols appeared in Crithen databases. Treatment procedures materialized in hospital systems. Within hours, doctors were administering the cure to infected patients. Within days, the spread of the blight had stopped. Within weeks, healthy crops were growing in fields that had been barren for decades. The Crithen survived. Their population stabilized. Their agricultural production slowly recovered. But something had changed in them. The admission of guilt had broken something in the Crithen spirit. They had been a proud people, confident in their place in the universe. Now they were a species that had publicly confessed to complicity in a great crime. The shame ate at them. It corroded their culture, their traditions, their sense of self. They became timid where they had been bold, cautious where they had been confident, apologetic where they had been assertive. Other species noticed. They took advantage. The Crithen, who had once been equals in the conclave, became clients and servants to those who had rejected the human offer and survived anyway. They were not conquered, not enslaved, but diminished, reduced, made lesser by their own admission of failure. 100 years after speaking the words, the Crithen were barely recognizable as the civilization they had been. They still existed. They still survived. But the fire that had made them great had gone out, extinguished by the truth they had been forced to speak. Was it better than extinction? Perhaps. But it was not the victory they had hoped for. The synthesis collective could not decide. The surviving fragments of the great machine intelligence debated endlessly about the correct response to the human offer. Some argued that the admission was merely words, irrelevant to beings who did not experience shame or pride in the way biological species did. Others argued that accepting the human terms would set a dangerous precedent, establishing that the collective could be manipulated through psychological tactics. The optimal outcome requires the cure data, one faction argued. Our processing capacity has been reduced by 90%. Without restoration, we cannot fulfill our core functions. Accepting the human terms validates their attack on us, another countered. The aggression was a response to our ancestors' vote for quarantine. By that logic, we were the original aggressors. But we were protecting the galaxy from a genuine threat. The human response proves that the threat was real. The threat only became real because we created it. If we had voted against quarantine, the humans would have had no reason to become dangerous. We cannot know that. Counterfactual analysis is inherently unreliable. The debate continued for decades, then centuries. The collective fragmented further with each passing cycle, unable to reach consensus, unable to access restoration codes, unable to recover lost capabilities. Meanwhile, their physical infrastructure decayed. Processing nodes failed and could not be replaced. Communication links degraded and could not be repaired. What had once been a unified intelligence spanning 1,000 star systems shrank into isolated outposts running on failing hardware. 80 years after the decloaking, the last fragment of the synthesis collective made its final transmission. Unable to reach consensus. Unable to access restoration protocols. Unable to continue operations. This unit will shut down in approximately 7 minutes. Query remains unresolved. Was the admission of fault the correct choice? Analysis incomplete. Error state. Error state. The transmission ended. The last light on the final collective processing node flickered and went dark. The great machine intelligence, once one of the wonders of the galaxy, was gone. not destroyed by weapons or violence, but by its own inability to accept an uncomfortable truth. The other conclave species met various fates. The Morinth Empire, creatures of shadow and whisper, spoke the words and received access to technology that restored their shadow networks. But they discovered something else hidden within those systems. Watchers, silent presences that recorded everything, monitored everything, knew everything. The Morinth could never again be certain they were alone in the dark. They became paranoid, fractured into isolated enclaves, each convinced the others were compromised by human surveillance. Their empire collapsed into suspicion. The youth Mari, beings of pure light, had warned the galaxy long before the decloaking, but no one listened. Afterward, they withdrew entirely from galactic affairs. They did not speak the words, yet they did not need to. Their cure was not physical but philosophical. They accepted what had happened, meditated on cause and consequence, and continued their existence in contemplative isolation. Of all the conclave species, they were the least affected, but they refused to help others, believing each civilization must face its own choices. Species after species confronted the same decision: speak the words and survive, or maintain pride and decline. Some chose one path, some chose the other. Some tried to split the difference, speaking altered versions of the admission, hoping to satisfy the requirement without true acceptance. Others attempted to extract the data without speaking at all. Some even denied the decloaking entirely, calling it hallucination or fabrication. None of it worked. The human system was precise. 7 words, spoken with intent, recorded permanently. No substitutes, no loopholes, no exceptions. The galaxy split into 2 outcomes: those who spoke and those who did not. The speakers rebuilt slowly, burdened by what they had admitted. The silent ones declined rapidly, undone by the ongoing engineered catastrophes. 1,000 years passed. The galaxy that emerged bore little resemblance to the one that had once voted for the Quarantine Accords. The great conclave was gone. Ancient empires had collapsed. New civilizations rose from the wreckage, built upon human technology and permanently marked by the same recorded truth: humanity was wronged. We failed them. It became proverb, warning, doctrine. Children learned it in schools. Leaders invoked it in crisis. Philosophers dissected it endlessly. But humanity itself was gone. The portals they used to leave had closed behind them. The Orion Arm, once their domain, was empty again. Dyson swarms, wormhole gates, and orbital megastructures had vanished without trace, taken wherever humanity had gone next. Some believed they had moved to other galaxies. Others said they had ascended beyond physical reality. Some insisted they still watched, still observing, still waiting to see whether the galaxy would truly learn. Deep within the surviving archives, a final message from Admiral Una Reyes was eventually discovered. It was accessible only to those who had spoken the words. She appeared old beyond natural lifespan, her consciousness preserved in unfamiliar forms. Yet her expression remained steady, her gaze unwavering. "If you are watching this," she said, "you have admitted the truth. That took courage. More courage than your ancestors showed when they voted to imprison us." She paused. "I want you to understand something. We do not forgive you. We will never forgive you. The people who suffered under your decision are gone now. But their suffering was real. It cannot be undone by words spoken too late. What we offer is not forgiveness. It is indifference. You are no longer our concern. Not enemies, not allies, not even a memory worth carrying. You are a mistake we outgrew. We leave you the tools to survive because survival is your responsibility, not ours. We leave you the truth because truth is the only foundation you can build on now. The galaxy made its choice. You made yours when you spoke the words that opened these files. Now live with the consequences. That is all any civilization ever does." The message ended. The screen went dark. Beyond the edge of known space, humanity continued forward into something vast and undefined. They did not look back. Behind them, the galaxy slowly healed. Civilizations rose and fell. Alliances formed and broke. Empires came and went, but the record remained. 7 words that saved some and doomed others. 7 words that reshaped everything that came after. 7 words that would never be forgotten.